It's hard to underplay the significance of the Boston bombing attacks that have occurred so recently, and we've seen such enormous amount of media coverage on that. It's highly significant for the American people, for the American security services, for the American government as a whole, and also the American psyche. We need to remember that this is the first successful attack on US soil since 9/11, the first detonation of an explosive device by suspected Islamist militants on US soil since 9/11, and that's hugely significant for the US public. It not only brings back a lot of hard to deal with memories, but also has raised issues with US responses and intelligence frameworks in the build-up to these types of attacks. What's the significance of Boston as a target? There have been questions raised around why Boston and why the Boston Marathon. It didn't seem on the surface to be a significant target. I would disagree with these analyses. Firstly, you can't discount the fact that this target was in close proximity to where these two young brothers were actually living, so they had a lot of access to the infrastructure for scanning of the target before the actual attack took place. And also you can't discount the fact that it is a highly internationalized event. There were many hundreds, if not thousands, of international runners at that event. It was known that there were going to be tens of thousands of spectators, of athletes and competitors. You had the world's media's attention already there. Therefore, it was a high-value target. And secondly, a particularly difficult target to protect. Now, if you have a sporting event which is taking place within a stadium, there are a lot of checks and measures and scans that you can undertake in order to, if you like, limit the risks of this kind of incident taking place. However, when you're talking about a marathon which is taking place on over 26 miles of a racing course, then that is incredibly difficult for security services to lock down, nigh on impossible. Therefore, the target was an appealing one in that regard for these two brothers. So what do we know about the two perpetrators of this bombing? There were two brothers, Dzhokhar, the youngest of the two, and Tamerlan Tsarnaev, the elder brother, originally born in Chechnya, which in a lot of media reporting, a lot of focus has been on Chechnya and the potential terrorist threat emanating from there, and I think that's a misnomer in itself. Chechen terrorism has been directly related to the Russian government, and there's never been any evidence to say that Chechen terrorists were looking to target the US, so I think we should kind of dampen, if you like, that speculation around that linkage. However, we know that these two brothers were born in Chechnya, arrived in the US about 10 years ago. We know that the elder brother, Tamerlan, he was a mechanic and also a very, very good boxer, and at one point had aspirations to fight for the US in the Olympics. The younger brother clearly was a bright individual, was studying at a US university, studying medicine. However, there are details now coming out into the public domain about the older brother, Tamerlan, and what his motivations might have been. Now, he undertook a trip to Dagestan, where his parents were living. Now, Dagestan is just to the southeast of Chechnya. Still a lot of similar issues there regarding Russian government and Muslim individuals of Muslim background within that country. There's a lot of tension still there. And there's not really an understanding of when he traveled back to Dagestan what actually occurred during the 6 months that he was there between January 2012 and July 2012. But it's suspected that's where he undertook a degree of radicalization. Upon returning, there were reports that he was flagged with the authorities. Now, Russian FSB, the Russian intelligence service, had reported to their FBI counterparts that Tamerlan had actually traveled to Dagestan, and they felt that he was worthy of further investigation. Now, he was investigated by the FBI, but the FBI didn't feel that they had enough evidence in place to be able to put him under arrest and take that investigation any further. There's been a lot of speculation around the motivations of these two individuals. and exactly why they conducted these attacks. And it's important that we say we simply don't know at this juncture until the younger brother, who's still alive and is being extensively interviewed right now. We don't know exactly what their motivations were for this attack. And it's important to state that, because until we do, we can't begin to make all of the linkages and really provide in-depth analysis as to what this means in the long term for the terrorist threat. We can make judgments at this moment, but concrete firm analysis will be difficult until we have those details out. So what does this incident tell us about the threat from terrorism, especially in the US? Well, I think what it demonstrates is that these two individuals, as far as we know, were not linked, were not networked to a group structure, and that makes life very, very difficult for the response. What we've seen in the US is a pattern of individuals acting separately of a network group. When you have a network group, there are many more points whereby intelligence services, the police, can interdict. More mistakes are made when there are more people involved. Communications can be tapped, and intelligence is easier to be gathered because they have more points of contact, if you like, with everyday society. And one of the strongest weapons against terrorism is people, the general public's vigilance and willingness to report suspicious behaviour back to the authorities. But in this case, that didn't exist. And we've seen these series of events in the US, be it from right-wing extremists or from al-Qaeda-inspired individuals such as Nidal Malik Hussein, who conducted the 2009 killing of 13 US Army personnel at Fort Hood. You also have Faisal Shahzad, who attempted to blow up a bomb in 2010 in Times Square. Fortunately, that device fizzled out before it detonated. But you've seen these individuals who are working separately of a broader framework. And this, if you like, is where the threat is now progressing. It seems to be that it's very, very difficult now, with the improvements and ramping up of security structures in the Western world. It's a lot more difficult to conduct, if you like, a spectacular attack. But what is occurring are these individuals who are taking inspiration from online sermons, getting if you like, the capacity to be able to build explosive devices from online sources. And if you like, this process of self-radicalization is a very dangerous cycle, which is very hard to monitor for the authorities, and one which is particularly difficult because you get very little warning before an attack is about to take place. So what does this case tell us about in terms of the security response? Well, I think it certainly highlighted deficiencies in intelligence sharing arrangements in US agencies, which is something we've seen in the past. And we've seen this before in 2009 with Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib, who was more widely known as the Underpants Bomber. His father had reported him to the CIA in Nigeria, saying that he suspected that he'd become radicalized and he might conduct an attack. The CIA had reported this into their own system and undertaken further investigation, but the information had not been shared with the various terrorist databases that existed in the US. Therefore, he managed to slip through the net, obtain a US visa, and get himself on board that plane towards Detroit. And this led to Obama making very strong public statements around intelligence sharing, intelligence data sharing within US authorities. We also have to be careful. It shows how much power terrorists can actually have, especially these groups of unnetworked individuals, because they can radically change government policy at a rate which you wouldn't see normally. And we've seen this in response to the Richard Reed shoe bombing incident, to the liquid bomb plot that was attempted in the UK, whereby we've seen how these individuals and these groups have managed to change patterns of our everyday lives. And that is at the core of the terrorist cause, is to try and create panic, to unsettle our everyday way of life. And it's really important that that doesn't occur. And I think it's important to remember that the most powerful response we have to terrorism is by staying calm, is by not letting it change our everyday ways of being in everyday life, and remembering that as individuals we have a responsibility to report very suspicious activity and not be afraid to report that kind of activity. And by doing so, you can actually be a far more effective part in the response to terrorism and making sure that we see less and less of this kind of incident in the future.